Hello and welcome to Rolling with Two. I'm Will, and with me is my space cadet,
Sarah.
And today we're looking at
Space Explorers?
very good.
Is this a quiz?
Yes. And you're doing fantastic. Sarah, tell us a bit about Space Explorers.
All right. Set in the golden age of astronautics, your goal is to recruit the brightest specialists and complete projects to be recognized as the best space research center in the world. All right, Will, how do the rules change for two players?
So for two players, there is one change, and that is the number of projects that goes out. It's going to be equal to the number of players plus 2. So you'll get 4 projects out on the board. That's the only setup change.
All right, so that means there's no bot.
No, there is no Nana Spaceman.
Aw.
So he can pretend to be a moon, I guess. That's the best he can do.
All right, let's take a look at some issues, potential for a two-player experience. The specialist row can get stagnant. We've seen this in a lot of games where there's a row of cards. But the good news here is you can draw off the top of the deck. It is a blind draw, but at least there is that option to get a different card if there's absolutely nothing in the middle that you want.
Right. And it's a fairly sizable row that you can have too.
Right. It starts off at a set number,
Like
and it has
8?
and it has a minimum
Of 6.
but you can get more.
Yeah, once you go below that, that's when it starts refilling itself.
Yes.
Otherwise, yeah, you're just pulling off blindly off the top, but that's helpful when there's absolutely nothing that can help you right in front of you.
Exactly. There are also fewer sets of research tokens. Each player starts with a set of one of each of the research tokens, and these can be spent to put out specialists into your hub. The thing is, with only 2 players, and you're only going to have 2 copies of each token, so it's going to be a heavier reliance on spending cards to put cards out.
Yeah, to give you a little context, there are 5 different tokens. So I'll have a full set of 5. Sarah will have a full set of 5. When we build and spend them, they don't actually get spent and put back in the box. They actually get moved to the other player, which is really neat because then you have this ability to trade resources back and forth. Now it's easier for me to build. Now it's easier for her to build, and back and forth.
It's the concept of shared knowledge, which is really cool, and we'll talk about more in the review video. But for the instances of a 2-player experience, it does make it a heavier focus on card acquisition.
Yes.
Which also means that if you get any card drawing abilities, that can be a huge advantage if the other person doesn't get anything.
Now the reason why a card acquisition becomes so important is because if, say, I don't have the tokens or I'm missing in some way, the way you actually make up for that is putting a card back out in the row, and it'll count for 2 of any of the icons. So it becomes the money of the whole game. And like Sarah said, card acquisition is king in a 2-player game, especially since like one of the actions you can is just take 1 card.
Yeah.
But if you're now taking 2 cards, it's like you're taking 2 turns
In one go.
versus other person's 1 turn.
Yeah. So it can be a big advantage in that. But moving on to what it does well for the 2-player experience, well, you only have 1 other opponent, so it's really easy to keep track of what they're doing. So you can see which project are you going for? So it's easier to figure out what they're going for and, well, do something different, or figure out if you can do it first.
Right.
But if you're playing, 3 or 4 players, it's a lot more to keep track of. And so if you're going for a certain project and you either don't realize that someone else is as well and they get it before you, that can really suck. Or like I said, it's harder to tell what everyone is going for when there's more people at the table.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for 2 players. So moving on to accessibility. The research icon design, the icon itself is fine, but the way they colored it can be difficult for those with severe vision issues because they cut the icon in like half, and the color on the left side is inverted from the color on the right side. looks cool, but it can be really hard for, eyes that are not great to be able to figure out what the heck is going on.
Yeah, it becomes very busy, and especially as you're like focusing on one side and then you glimpse on the other side and then your brain gets all wires crossed.
Yeah.
You're like, what am I looking at? Okay, it just takes a while to focus on it.
Right.
Not that the fact that the icon's bad. They're actually very good, clean icons. It's just because of the artistic choice makes it a tad hard to see. Now, one thing you could probably do is take your thumb, put a finger over the side that you don't like to look at, and it's like, oh yeah, it's that icon. That could also help.
That's true.
In that respect. Now, another issue comes more cognitive-wise. So, in the game, you have research, which is what you use to pay to get your specialists, and you have skills, which is what you use to buy the projects. They are connected color-wise and a bit narrative-wise as well. The problem is that connection is more thematic than anything else.
Right.
And you don't need to. And that's where we actually saw a lot of problems, just us learning the game and playing the game, because we saw the connections visually and thematically, and we kept trying to make the connections happen. They don't really exist. There's not a straight vertical connection between the research and the skills. They look like two different icons because they are two different icons and they do two different things.
Yeah, I think there's some sense to why they are. So like a specialist that is of, and I'm just forgetting.
Engineering.
Engineering, let's say. So there's a specialist that has the engineering skill, will have a research icon that is the same color in their cost most of the time.
With the gear, so yeah, engineering.
Yeah. But there'll be other research icon costs, so it's not like you just need the associated research icon for engineering. You need other ones too, but color-wise, they're the same. The problem that we really had is the skill icons are very abstract. The research icons are very concrete. You have a gear and
a hook
and
a space helmet.
The space helmet, yeah. So they're very concrete icons. But the skills, like one of them is like a swoosh, a
Stars,
star. I mean, I think
swirls.
the only one that really connected was through the space helmet research. The skill icon that matches color looks like the curve of the Earth with the moon, overhead, so that, space person going to the moon or into space. That connected in a logical sense. But a lot of the other ones were very abstract, and so it didn't connect. So it was an odd cognitive challenge for us until we finally realized they're not really connected, so we don't really need to put that much effort into it. A specialist needs these research icons. This specialist provides these skill icons. They're separate.
It's just two layers.
Two layers.
It just looks connected,
right,
but it's not.
So maybe that was just weird for us, but we both experienced it. So it's something we want to share.
I can't remember how many times I was like, okay, so I have the engineering. It's like, no, you only have this guy. But what about my icon? That's not what you need for the project.
Right.
Oh, what do I need?
Yeah.
And it just kept going back and forth like that.
Right. So I had thought maybe if they had just used the same icon and made it square for the research and circular for the skill. But on the other hand, like Will said,
it's not connected.
It's not connected. They don't need to be the same. All the research icons could have been not colored. They could have just been the icon because they are really not that associated. Sure, an engineering specialist will probably need more, I think it was gears.
Yeah, or produce gears.
But there'll also be other things that it requires. So it's not completely connected.
Yeah.
I think that was it for the challenges for accessibility. But what it does great, it does really, really great. So going over again cognitively, the rule book is fantastic. The edges of the pages show like tabs, like if this was like I don't know what a file folder, and it's tabbed and labeled, so it's like if you want setup, gameplay, reference, credits, it's all there, and it's just like not highlighted, but it's a different color when you're in the correct section for that name,
where the other one's grayed out.
where the other ones are grayed out. So I know having like an index can be fantastic for a rule book, but this was just so much easier because you could just literally flip through the book and stop and be like, oh, okay, this is the section I need.
Yeah, and they're all lined up so you know what comes next and what
Right.
came before. If you're looking for an accessible rule book and you're like a designer or want to be a designer,
Yeah.
buy this game just for the rule book.
I mean, I know it was a completely thematic choice, but it's a very accessible choice that just made it so much easier. Again, an index or what is it you put at the end of books?
Appendix?
Appendix? Where,
Glossary?
Glossary, maybe that's what I'm looking for. But where you have a list of key words with what page they're on. That's helpful too, but I don't know. There's just something so straightforward about this. And I'm not done with the rule book. The back of the rule book has a great overview of all the gameplay and the icons, and it's just like, I know a lot of rule books do this, but not a lot. I mean, some don't do anything. A lot of them put something, but this one just was really well organized. And to move on to more player aids, they have a player sheet that goes over all of the iconography for the specialist abilities. And that is just like really, really needed. It's always a challenge to learn a new language. And honestly, in board games, when you do everything iconography with, no English, and I understand it's to make it language independent so you can easily publish it in other languages. But it makes it challenging because you're learning a new language. What do these symbols mean? And what consistency is there to them? Well, the reference sheet takes out all the guesswork. You just look, each card has a number. You look for the number. They are grouped by specialist type, so engineering and so on and so forth. But it's really easy, and it gives you the full English explanation of what those icons do. So eventually you'll learn them, but while you're learning them, you've got that great reference.
Yeah.
I think, a lot of it's open information. I don't remember if we've addressed this yet, but even though your hand is supposed to be secret, you can play it open-handed. We usually
That's how I played it.
Yeah.
And I won. So it's not anything that's gonna break. I think there are a few abilities where you can maybe steal something from somebody.
I feel like that it steals randomly,
Yeah,
so
you're not even choosing.
Right. So there's very little player interaction where me knowing what he has is going to really affect anything. I know for me personally, I'm the type of player who's so focused on trying to just get my hand to work that even if I read him his cards, they aren't even in one ear and out the other. I'm just reading it, and it's not even absorbing what he has.
Yeah.
So yes, you draw some cards off the top, and they're supposed to be secret. But if you're really having trouble with some of those icons, especially the research icons, you can get someone to help, and/or if you have assistive devices.
Yeah.
Okay, let's conclude then.
So for 2 players, would you recommend this?
I say yes. There's a lot of fun play space here for 2 players. There's some easier aspects, some not so easier aspects, but overall, it is a good 2-player experience.
I would recommend it provided you're not a novice player.
Well, that's true.
This one has a little bit of a higher barrier to learn, but once you learn it, it does so many clever things in really good ways.
But wouldn't you say that about any player count?
Yes, for this game specifically.
So that's not specific to a 2-player experience.
Although,
You think in more players you'd have more people to learn from?
yeah, and
Okay.
I'd say 4 players, I could see a novice player coming into this and then being coached along by the other players.
I gotcha.
But when it comes to a 2-player and one's novice and one's not, even then I'm like, no. Because the person who's the novice player most likely will have a really bad experience and they will never want to play this game again.
Yeah, no, I can see that because it's a bit more head-to-head competition in a 2-player game.
Yes.
So the novice player is going to be less likely to want to ask questions. And the more experienced person's probably a little less likely going to be that helpful.
Yeah, so 2 players, maybe make sure you have game experience from things like Century Golem Edition, Splendor, other deck building engine building type games before you just dive into this one, because this is probably the next step up. It's an evolution, definitely.
Yes.
From those games. Accessibility wise,
I say yes, unless you've got severe vision issues. You're going to have some trouble with those icons. So you're either going to need someone to help you or have an assistive device to be able to play.
or you don't mind playing open-handed like I do.
Yes, that's true.
So accessibility, yep, yes, agreed
right.
with that. So hopefully any or all of that is helpful. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with Two, that's TWO. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And on YouTube, please like and subscribe.
And why would you ever go to space alone when you can be rolling with two?